Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next phase Innovating on the Cloud in 2021 and beyond, presented by Apper Digital Inc. This is Marcel Cruz, and we are so excited to have all of you here at Startup Week 2021. And before we do begin, and before I introduce our speakers from Apper, I'd like to give a short introduction about what Apper does and who we are and what we've been doing for our clients all this time. All right, so Apper Digital Inc., we help businesses adopt innovations on the cloud, and we extend our expertise to ensure efficient execution so that businesses can focus more on what is important to their business. This is Apper.ph innovating with you. Please enjoy the short video introduction of Apper.
Since entering the new decade, businesses are enjoying lower overall IT spend by as much as 30%. More and more businesses are adopting new technology to keep up with the ever-changing demands of their customers. Welcome to Apper. Here, we help businesses adopt innovations on the cloud and build collaborative partnerships with our clients. We have worked with our trusted partners over the years to ensure hassle-free, efficient, and seamless implementation of technology. Are you ready to innovate on the cloud? Let's build your innovation roadmap together. Talk to us. Visit www.apper.ph to learn more. Apper.ph, innovating with you.
Thank you so much. And just to give further information, Apper is actually an AWS advanced consulting partner and an advanced consulting partner for the public sector. And this is one of a handful of Apple is one of a handful of AWS managed partners in the country to receive this distinction. We are so excited to innovate with you. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. So we have Diwa Del Mundo, the co-founder and president of Apper.ph, and he is one of the pioneers in fintech and cloud computing in the industry market with over 15 years of working experience. And before founding Apper.ph, he took on software architect and product engineering roles for almost 5 years. He has also worked with software and app development companies, which handle global brands such as Friendster and Viki, and has since established himself as a country expert in security, payments, and cloud architecture. And also, Diwa currently holds 10 cloud certifications with three specialty and two professional certifications from AWS. And this is currently the most number of cloud badges in the country. Our next speaker is also another co-founder of Apper, Mr. Patrick Sulweta, our director for growth. And Patrick is a country pioneer for launching and managing technology brands. He's helped tech brands such as Kashalo, Paymaya, and BPI achieve millions of downloads and users, as well as triple-digit revenue growth in the first 2 years. Since then, he has become the co-founder and director of growth for Apper.ph, and he continues to help businesses adopt new technology and innovation. With over 13 years of experience in marketing strategy, branding, business development, and marketing communications, Patrick's mission is to continually uh, empower the underserved via digital transformation. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to present our first speaker for today, Mr. Diwa Del Mundo, co-founder and president of Apper.ph.
Thanks, Mo, and magandang hapon, startup founders and aspiring startup founders. So thank you for PH Startup Week for inviting us again to share our experience and our thoughts to the community. So as a startup supporter and also a part of the startup community for many years, I'm very privileged to have this opportunity to share what I've learned in the past decade working with cloud technologies. You might have heard of cloud already. It's something that is not new anymore. But what I want to share this afternoon is how you can leverage the cloud the right way from day one. So to briefly give a background of myself, so I have a decade of working with cloud technologies. I've started my journey very early in the early 2010s as a software developer, working for a video streaming startup called Viki.com. So it's one of the most early success story of startups based in Singapore. It was eventually bought by Rakuten for almost 200 million US dollars, and I was very fortunate to get exposed or to have got into an environment where I was able to get my hands in cloud technologies. And since then, I was able to grow my experience, my expertise, working in the industry for almost 15 years, mostly with startups. So I'm very passionate in helping startup founders because I know how hard it is to really grow something from the ground up. In addition, because of my passion working in cloud technologies, I was also a cloud community leader of the AWS User Group Philippines. It's a community of enthusiasts and users of the platform, and I served the community from 2014 to 2019. Over the years, I've collected cloud certifications. So I have all of the AWS certifications and also cloud computing certifications from other cloud service providers such as Alibaba Cloud, Google Cloud Platform, and also information security, which is the CISSP. Now, if you're new into the cloud, you might be surprised that it's actually a very mature technology. It has been there for quite some time. In fact, AWS or Amazon Web Services launched publicly way back in 2006. So that's almost 15, 16 years ago. It's been a while. And you might be wondering, how come it became really popular? So we need to understand what's cloud computing first, right? So think of it as a way to access services over the public internet. So if you search for Wikipedia, you'll see that it's the practice of using a network of remote servers hosted on the internet to store, manage, and process data rather than a local server or personal computer. AWS defines it as a way to access IT resources and applications on demand via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. So you'll see here there are two things. One is you access IT resources and you pay on the fly or on demand. There are many types of cloud computing services, so I won't go deep dive into these services, but generally, practically all the things that you need to come up with a digital service or digital innovation are all in the cloud already. So you start with what we call virtual services. So normally, before the cloud became popular, if you want to launch, let's say an application, you might need to purchase servers to host the data of your users. So that implies a huge amount of capital expenditure. But nowadays, you can use infrastructure as a service types in cloud platforms. So you can have your virtual servers like Amazon EC2, Amazon RDS, virtual disks such as Amazon VPS, Amazon EBS, and virtual networks such as Amazon VPC. And as you go up the stack, you can access more advanced services. You can use platform as a service, where you can just upload your application code and you don't need to provision resources on the infrastructure level. And there are many types over the years that have came out. You have SaaS services or software as a service. In this cloud computing service type, you just need to access the service. No need to configure anything. You just need to access it over a web browser. And you also have very specific services for developers. Let's say you're building a new platform from scratch. You can utilize services such as Amazon SQS and Amazon SNS as a way to do application integration, and also very specialized services for compute like AWS Lambda or Cloud Functions in GCP. So what is the implication of cloud computing to startups? So let me give a short quote from the CTO of Amazon Web Services. So his name is Werner Vogels. So he's the CTO of Amazon for the longest time. And what he's saying essentially that AWS has changed the cost of starting a business radically. So prior to the cloud, you will need a minimum of USD $5 million to start a digital business. Now it's down to 50,000 USD. And you might have noticed over the past decade during the 2010s, this is a time also that there was an explosion of digital innovations, primarily driven by mobile apps. And a lot of these mobile apps, these are the apps you use every day. Almost all of them are powered by cloud computing platforms. So it it kind of gives us the effect or the how or the overall impact of cloud computing to our day-to-day lives. So it's there. We don't work or we don't interact with it directly as an end user, but the apps that we use for our everyday life are all powered by the platform. To give you the perspective on how cloud computing evolved and how it affected our digital lives, when I started my journey in the early 2010s, I could remember that AWS has less than 25 services. So it's a handful of services, mostly on the infrastructure level or the IS level, mostly offering virtual servers, storage services, and networking. So I could still vividly remember it's a very simple time for cloud computing because it's simple. You only have a few services, so you don't need to spend a lot of time to learn it. And over the years, what happened is there's an explosion because of the demands of users. It also required developers and startups to innovate. So as a way to come up or to be at the same pace as the demands of startups, AWS also expanded its portfolio. So by mid 2010s, you have roughly 60 services already. And now in the 2020s, there are more than 200 cloud services. And more or less, this is outdated already by the time that you visit, let's say, the AWS Management Console or any of the cloud service provider platform. Nowadays, you'll see that there are so many services. So if you try to look, let's say, at the AWS Management Console, everything that you need to build innovations are accessible with a click or an API call away. So you'll see here that practically the screen shows a screenshot of the AWS Management Console, and you can see it's practically overflowing the entire screen. So you have services anywhere from compute, the storage, the base services, to more powerful or more advanced services like machine learning. And of course, you also have services specifically to help you manage your data. So services for security, identity, and compliance are all within an API call away. You need to understand that the cloud is not just about virtual server storage or database anymore. So that is true when the cloud started, late 2000s and early 2010s. You should think about virtual servers. But what I want to point here is that it's not about virtual servers anymore. In fact, I would say that you shouldn't think about servers anymore. There are a lot of services that will help you to come up with your digital innovation without even touching virtual servers. You can build practically anything. It could be a digital product, a platform, or an innovation that might even require hardware like IoT or some robotic innovation. But practically all of them need to talk to a platform, to a backend, which is the cloud. There are more non-infrastructure cloud services like machine learning, management and governance, security services, compared to compute, storage, and database services. So you'll see here that the cloud evolved as the users, the ecosystem evolved also. So let me quickly backtrack a bit. So you might be wondering, okay, so since you're accessing virtual resources over the internet, which is a public network, how about security, governance, and compliance? So compared before that things are simpler, as a startup founder, you might be thinking, okay, I know I can use the cloud as a way to implement my infrastructure, but how do I protect the data? I understand it's a public resource, and there could be a lot of customers using the same infrastructure. So one thing we need to understand is there's what we call shared responsibility model. So this model is specific for AWS, but generally it also applies to any cloud service provider. There are two parties here. You have the cloud service provider like AWS, which is responsible for the security of the cloud. Essentially, they are they make sure that the physical infrastructure that runs the cloud are secured. So this entails protecting the compute, storage, database, and network infrastructure, the global physical network that runs everything and ties everything together, including the physical data centers. So in an AWS speak, you have this group of physical data centers. You call it availability zones, and a group of availability zones within the same geographic location is called the region. So all of them are protected by AWS as a cloud service provider. There are also edge locations. So these are normally you would think of it as a way to deliver content faster. So let's say if you're trying to deliver video streams, normally you get the data from servers very close to you. So in AWS, you call them edge locations, and kind of similar to the concept of a CDN, content delivery network, and they're also responsible to protecting them. Now, as a customer, so in this case, let's say you're a startup and you want to use the cloud, you're given all of these tools and infrastructure, and you're responsible for the security in the cloud. So what does it mean? So it means that you're responsible for protecting your data and your users' data. You're given the tools like the platforms, applications, and access control, like identity and access management services to protect your data. You can have access, just like a physical server, you can have access direct to the operating system, and even the network and firewall configuration. So it means that as a customer, you should be able to do the patching, the right configuration on your network and firewall to make sure that data is protected. And when it comes to data protection, of course, you need to make sure that data is encrypted. So let's say if you have a mobile app, you want to make sure that the data passes through a secure channel. So client-side data encryption and data integrity should be upheld. At the same time, server-side encryption. So when data gets saved in your platform, to make sure that you can protect it. So protecting it when it's being saved or at rest, you need to make sure that you have the proper configuration and management of the encryption keys. And as data gets passed from the client side towards your platform, making sure that it's encrypted is a responsibility of the customer. And for a startup, it's very important for you to have a good understanding of these responsibilities. You also need to think that when the cloud started, things are much more simpler. And for a startup founder now, you need to think a lot of things. Of course, you need to make sure that you have a functional product, right? And also you want to make sure that it's secure. But nowadays, you also need to think about things like compliance. So in our country, there are certain things that you need to be aware of, let's say if you deal with money or you provide a financial service, depending on your financial services category, you might need to comply with the BSP. So you need to understand the context of the regulatory environment for your startup. And generally, aside from the BSP requirements for financial services companies or even fintechs, you also need to make sure that you can protect your customer data at the very least. So aligning and complying with the National Privacy Commission through the Philippine Data Privacy Act of 2012 needs to be there, right? So understanding all of these, so cloud can also help you do the compliance. Most cloud service providers can give you the guidance on how to design your infrastructure, design your platform to be compliant with the security and compliance rules. So one thing I would advise for startup founders is you need to think about these things early on. Usually what I noticed over the years, having worked with a lot of startups, usually the compliance comes in later on, once the app or service is out or in production. And usually most startups will try to tack on the compliance part. And usually it doesn't end well, in the sense that it takes a lot of effort to comply if you do your design incorrectly. So that entails a lot of effort, a lot of money to do back jobs or to backtrack certain things that you have decided on when you started in order to comply. So if you're aspiring to create your startup or you're in the process of starting up already, make sure that you can comply already with the relevant data security standards and compliance requirements from the get-go. Don't wait until the auditor or there's a there's a warning already from the BSP before you do your controls and security remediation. So given this, okay, so I've given you the definition of the cloud and how it can help you, the compliance and security aspect. How can you start your cloud journey? So as a startup, it's very important where to start, right? Now, I could confidently say that no doubt you need to start building on the cloud. So now it's not even a question anymore. If you're building something digitally, you need to build on cloud services. So what's important for you as a startup founder is to understand the cloud economics. So it's quite different from the usual way of establishing something from the get-go. Because usually you need to have capital, let's say to buy servers, to buy the network to run your platform or digital innovation. The cloud essentially, since you need to pay the services or resources that you use on the go, you need to shift to a more consumption model way of thinking. So it means that rather thinking it in a more static way, think of it just like how you think about the usage of your electricity. So normally it's something that we know, right? So as a consumer of electricity, we know that at the end of the day, we get billed by the distribution electricity distribution company. So the more we use, the more we pay. So having said that, on the cloud, it's the same thing. You use more resources, and then of course you need to pay more. But if you use less resources, you can use it to your advantage, especially when you're starting or creating your startup. So you don't need to shell out a lot of money because you can just pay what you need during that point of time. And as you scale, the cloud can also scale with you. It's very important also to don't go head first. So a lot of times, what I'm pointing out here is that you need to have a solid plan and don't try to do things just bahala na, sign up for an AWS management, sign up for an AWS account through the AWS management console, and have your team figure it out. It doesn't work anymore, primarily because of a lot of the things can get really complicated. And if you go with the head first approach, it might cost you a lot of money in the long run. So making sure that you can build your organization's capability from the start will be a better option rather than just trying to go there, try lang, bahala na. It might be harder for you to scale. Now, if you're already in the cloud and if you're a startup, most likely you might have encountered cloud already, or perhaps you have started building already. The key here is to always optimize your cost and do a lot of automation. So remember, when you're a startup, cost is critical, right? Because you want to reduce your burn rate as much as you can. So it doesn't make sense to pay for cloud resources that you don't use, right? So it means that making sure your tech team can turn off resources that are not in use, or making sure that you can maximize the usage of your cloud services, right? So if you're paying more than you should, make sure that you can look at your cloud bill and determine, okay, which parts or which portion of the bill can be optimized so you can reduce it, right? Therefore, giving you more money, giving you more runway for your startup. At the same time, doing a lot of automation can pay a lot in the long run. So the cloud essentially makes infrastructure as software. So it means it can be programmed. So no need to hire someone to do things that can be done via software. Also, one thing I want to emphasize also is don't think about servers anymore. I think it's kind of old already, to be honest. Start thinking about serverless and container technologies. The reason you want to do this is because you can leverage the scalability of the cloud in a more cost-efficient manner. Normally, when you provision virtual servers, you pay for the allocation of a virtual machine on the cloud. It's okay if you're fully utilizing the full capacity of the compute and memory of the virtual server. But for a startup, most of the time, especially when you're new or you just have launched, means that you're not fully reaching the capacity limit of the cloud resources. The better approach is to look at more modern technologies such as serverless cloud services or container technologies so you can fully utilize the capacity that you need. At the same time, machine learning is something that is reachable for practically any organization nowadays. Machine learning exploded in popularity in the early 2010s, and there's also a correlation with the rise of cloud computing with the machine learning technologies and services that we know of. Normally, when we think of machine learning, we think about AI, robots, right? But machine learning is practically anywhere. Just open your favorite app, you can have recommendations. And those recommendations essentially are powered by machine learning algorithms. Previously, these capabilities are only available to the most advanced organizations in the world. So companies such as Google, Meta, Facebook, and Netflix, no? All of these top companies have the capability because they have dozens of data scientists and data engineers and machine learning engineers trying to build these innovations. But for startups, you can now leverage the same capability with cloud services. And it's way easier now. And so it's something that you want to consider as a startup founder, making your offering more intelligent from the get-go instead of waiting for users to come and think of ways. Now you can leverage ML services on the cloud to build intelligence and innovation. One thing about cloud is since it's flexible due to its OPEX model, you can do a lot of experiments. And this is very important for startup founders since as a startup, you don't know if the product market fit is there when you start. And normally, you might even end up doing pivots and iterations for your products. So the key with cloud is you need to think of your cloud architecture and your strategy for implementation as something dynamic. So nothing is static. You always need to iterate as you get into that state that you can say that okay, what I'm offering has indeed a good product market fit. And that's the beauty of the cloud since a lot of the things are on demand and you only pay with what you use. It can help you determine your product market fit. And because of that, always remember because of this, you can optimize your spending. Remember, cloud is OPEX. It's all about the operational expenditures. So if you do an experiment, let's say on month one, and if you think that if it is not working already, then you can stop whatever you have used, right? So you can reduce your spend and perhaps you can reallocate the budget that you have into something more meaningful to align with the expectation of your users. The use of more modern cloud technologies are recommended. So as mentioned, things like serverless, containers, not thinking about servers, not thinking about operating them manually are keys for startup to survive. Because your resources are limited when you start, right? So making sure that you can bring value to every peso that you spend is critical. And there are a lot of modern cloud technologies that you can use to minimize your spend and maximize your runway as a startup. So with that said, give you some ideas on what are the trends for 2020 and beyond. So let me quickly give you some things that are happening in the industry. Some of these things might have read or have heard of already. So one thing that I'm noticing in the industry is that the hardware. So remember the security of the cloud. So cloud service providers are making the cloud infrastructure, the physical infrastructure that's powering cloud closer to users. And it's quite interesting that it's happening here in the Philippines also. So for context, for the longest time, if you want to use the cloud, you need to use public cloud regions outside of the country. So most cloud service providers have regions in Singapore or Hong Kong. So they're the closest regions to us. Now, if you want to bring it really close to your customers, so you can leverage edge, what we call edge computing. So these are physical or compute infrastructure very close to your users, and you can even have hybrid architectures. So you might do processing very close to the users for operations or processes that require fast feedback or fast latency. Or you can have it mixed that, okay, you do processing at the edge, but offload some of the processing to the public cloud for more advanced or for bigger sets of data. There's also a growth in IoT. So IoT is kind of common nowadays. In fact, you can buy IoT devices off the shelf, smart bulbs, smart weighing scales. So a lot of these things are smart in nature. They have an IP address. They can be programmed. So it means that if you want to develop with IoT, you can leverage, of course, the cloud to power and manage IoT devices. Just recall that for IoT, you might be managing, let's say, 1 million devices at the same time. So managing these IoT devices need to be taken into account when you plan your application or startup. And on the network side, it's quite also exciting because might heard already of 5G. So 5G also enables IoT because of the fact that it can enable IoT devices at scale. So in the Philippines, telcos are rolling out 5G technologies and networks already. This will enable exciting application that has a real-time and low latency requirements. For if you have a requirement to have computing on your premises, you can also use what we call cloud managed infrastructure like AWS Outposts that will allow you to process your data within your premises, and this will complement your infrastructure design on the edge. I'm also happy to share to you. So in case that you are not familiar, there's also what we call a public cloud region already in the country. So Alibaba Cloud, for example, have launched their first data center in the country. So Alibaba Cloud offered what we call the first public cloud region in the Philippines in Manila, and this will help you with your concerns regarding data residency and data sovereignty. I'm very excited with the promise of 5G. What we're seeing now in the 5G rollout of our telcos is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's mostly for improving mobile broadband. It's more of the what we call enhanced mobile broadband. But as we progress with the rollout of 5G technologies, we'll see more exciting applications that are enabled by the low latency and also fast processing of 5G. So I want to share one of the success stories that we had with one of our key customers, Globe Telecom, where we demonstrated the ability to do cloud gaming with Globe's 5G technology. So it's closer than you think, and you should start thinking of what is possible. What are the ways we can leverage these technologies to deliver more value to customers? So key takeaways: building on the cloud maximizes innovation, development, and provides faster time to market. Very, very important items as a startup. Always remember that cloud is more than just an infra. You can build practically any meaningful digital innovation on the cloud. And the next tech wave has started already. So 5G, edge compute, machine learning, IoT are all there. It's a matter of harnessing and leveraging them to build the next startup of the future. So, the question for me is, what are you going to build next? Thank you, and start building meaningful innovations on the cloud.
All right. Thank you so much, Diwa, for that insightful session. We hope you all learned a lot. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll be able to answer them later on. And now we move on to our second speaker as he talks about why you should innovate on the cloud. I'm happy to introduce and give the floor to Mr. Patrick Sulweta, Apper's co-founder and director for growth.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to all those who are attending the PH Startup Week 2021 festivity. So, Apper is thankful to be a partner of this event again this year, and we've been participating the last few years already. So, my section will be all about why you should innovate. All right. So, why should you innovate in the cloud? And why should your startup fully leverage the cloud to deliver innovations? Again, I'm Patrick Silweta, and one of the co-founders of Apper, and I champion growth. All right, so just a brief introduction of myself, so at least you have context as to what I'm sharing today. I have over a decade of launching and scaling FSIs or fintechs. I'm also what you call a FSI or fintechs app pioneer, and I've launched 3x since day zero of these brands. So you see the names before below, and I don't think I need to explain these brands anymore today. And I led the product and growth teams of these brands to over 2 million users within 2 years of their operations. So I was what you call a brand launcher and somebody who launched those products from day zero until their first 2 years. And I'm proud to say that they're now household names in the industry. And why Apper? You got a short introduction earlier from Marcel. And why am I part of Apper? And why should you partner with a company such as Apper for your projects in the future? We have over 20 years of IT experience, and it's collectively with varying experience in payments, infosec, e-commerce, video streaming, and payroll solutions. We have over 60 plus cloud certifications as well, all the way from professional, specialty, associate, and practitioner, the most in the country. Our team also has intensive experience architecting, building, and securing cloud platforms and applications. All right, so before I share with you the benefits of the cloud and why you should innovate in the cloud, I'd like to share with you some of the insights I garnered from the research I've done recently. I saw that the 2020s, and I discovered that the 2020s is the decade of the digitally conscious customer. All right. Why is this the decade of the digitally conscious customer? 68% of consumers said that the COVID-19 pandemic has raised their expectations of companies' digital capabilities. So this is something that I saw from the digital brand trend of Forbes. So you might ask me, wow, it's already very challenging to actually operate and run a business during the pandemic. But now, even more, since everyone's just at home, everyone is really using mobile applications and they're using the best ones, of course. Everyone expects that companies not only have to offer the best experience, but they also have to raise the bar for innovation. So no excuses here. They don't say that, oh, I understand this company because it's so much more difficult to operate in the pandemic, and because of that, I will actually be more patient with this app. It's not the case. They're actually even more demanding and they have greater expectations. The disruptions of 2020 have also tested the company's capabilities. I don't think we need to actually dive deep into this, but it's really, really challenging. Besides the fact that people have to adjust to the limitations of working from home, uh, the fact that it's so much more difficult to introduce new technology, as well as, of course, coordinate within teams to be able to introduce these innovations. It's also very challenging to also work with the customers, really get the insights, talk to them. It's also much more challenging. And we've seen that the companies handling this test best are those that let customers drive their innovation efforts. And that was published in the recent poll survey of the Harvard Business Review. A majority of innovation leaders have also increased the speed of their customer and end user innovation during the pandemic. This is something we've seen. And if you want to be a leader, if you want to be, of course, one of the top providers, then you have to keep up with their speed and pace of innovation. And one of the key takeaways I garnered from the research I've done is following the lead of these innovation leaders, they follow what we call a three-track approach. It's a balance between people, processes, and technology within organizations. So, yes, it's important that your people have the mindset for innovation, you have the right processes in place, they're established, and you've also tried and tested these processes. And lastly, you have available technology that you're not only able to understand, but you're able to implement and maintain, of course, through the years. Which is why companies such as Apper, and we're proud to say that we're an innovations partner of top digital companies today in the Philippines, such as GCash, Globe, for example, Beauty Manila, Bookie, Advance, some other fintechs such as NextPay. And we really see that we're able to complement the skills of these digital businesses. And we're able to not just be their partner, but we're able to help them maximize the cloud. And we saw that a flexible cloud infrastructure can also help these businesses have a balanced and efficient three-track approach. But you might ask me, why is the cloud critical for innovation, Patrick? It's the fact that a compelling reason to shift operations to the cloud is the ability to better allocate resources and gain flexibility as well as agility for your business. So CIO.com actually published that. And furthermore, I was able to also see from a survey done by Amazon Web Services, one of the partners of Apper, they surveyed around almost 1,000 corporations, and they're able to see that these corporations who are using the cloud are able to take advantage of these benefits. The first benefit is, of course, cost savings. Because of the fact that you are able to use a pay-as-you-go model, you're able to shift from a CapEx model to an OpEx model, and you're able to fully utilize the benefits of this type of arrangement. Second, staff productivity. Because of the fact that you're using the cloud, automation is able to be more introduced to your infrastructure as well as your operations, your processes. You're able to remove some of those manual steps and tasks which could be done and which could be automated. We're not taking away jobs, so don't get me wrong. We're actually introducing more value adding, more impactful work for those in your organizations. And because of that, people feel more productive because, of course, they're able to contribute to your organization more. Operational resilience is also one key benefit, and I would say it's something that's really shined during the pandemic. Those companies which are able to remain resilient despite the effects of calamities, security breaches, of course, pandemics as well, have really shown that they can really not just survive, but really stay the course through the decades. And operational resilience is definitely even stronger because of the cloud. Lastly, business agility is also very important. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to stay on top of your game, you want to maintain your leadership, or you want to become a leader, then you need to continue innovating and listening to your customers. Because of the fact that you really need to talk to the customers and really see what are their insights, what is it that we can do better to be able to provide you better experience. Then you need to not just listen to them faster, but you also need to remain agile, and you also need to implement these enhancements faster. And it's a proven fact that if you maximize the cloud, you're able to not just use it, but you're able to optimize your cloud infrastructure. You're able to fully utilize the benefits of the cloud. Then your business becomes even more agile. So those are just four benefits, but the list goes on and on. And I really think that, of course, tech startups nowadays are not just using the cloud, but they're really innovating on top of the cloud, really fully utilizing it. And of course, squeezing out whatever benefits, whatever superpowers they can get from their cloud providers. All right. Lastly, I'd like to share with you some of my insights with regards to scaling in the cloud. As I mentioned, I was privileged to be able to, of course, launch some hyper growth brands in the past, and some of them are fintechs. And I was able to see that there are certain things that you need to take note of if you want to not just launch your brand successfully, but of course, achieve hyper growth, really provide the best user experience for your customers, and of course, to continue exerting your dominance through the decades. So one of the things I saw is yes, it's important you focus on innovations for customer experience. That's one key aspect. But you also need to make sure you evolve your security posture as well, because as you know, the more popular your app or your product becomes, then the more vulnerable it will also be to security breaches, and of course those who want to do harm to your product or your app. So that's something that's very important. And you might ask me, how did we reach hyper growth for the three apps? So, of course, customer experience and innovation was essential to driving loyalty. We made sure we really listened to the customer. We were not just passive with regards to receiving these types of insights. We really had regular conversations with customers. We really listened to them, and of course, we in the brand and growth team, we tried to be the voice of the customer. We tried to really push these initiatives within the organization, and of course, by everyone in it. It can't just be the growth team who's bought into the insights of these customers. We want to make sure that all the other verticals or all the other departments within the team are also on board. We also saw that the cloud was able to help these fintechs not only scale, but remain secure and resilient. It was a known fact that when we were launching these products, when we were, of course, in the early days, we had to move at a very, very fast pace. And it was really, really hard to keep up with the not just the growth, but the demands of the customers. But because of the fact that we were able to utilize the cloud, we were able to remain agile, secure, and also adaptive. We were able to really adjust with not just the customers, but the changing seasons, times, and demands of the landscape that's here in the Philippines. All right. So, key takeaway, a healthy balance between innovation and evolving customer experience is really key if you want to continue launching these products, scaling, and of course, maintaining your leadership, or at least garnering leadership in the industry. All right, so I'm looking forward to seeing your innovations, and that wraps up my section. And I'd like to hear your questions as well as see your success stories. And if you want to reach out to myself, Wawi, or Marcel, then reach out to us at cloud@apper.ph. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick and Diwa. Thank you for that insightful session once more. And we would like to thank everyone who tuned in and listened to the insights shared by our founders. For any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat so that our speakers can answer them. Now, before we do end, I would just want to introduce and talk a little bit more of APRA's exciting program that can really help, especially the startups that are tuned in today, and some of our program offerings that we've curated especially for you. So let me just share my screen. All right. So I'd like to introduce APRA's Engage Innovate program that is made especially for SMBs and startups alike. So the program is all about accelerating your innovation on the cloud, and Apper can extend our expertise to accelerate your tech innovations and projects on the cloud. But what is this program all about, and what's in it for companies and tech startups alike? So with the Engage Innovate program, companies who would avail of this and apply for the program would be getting 36 hours of DevOps implementation and managed services with 8 by 5 technical support and weekly cadences, and of course, access to architectural and technical consultations. And this program starts at 50,000 pesos VAT exclusive monthly. So for as low as 50,000 pesos every month, you'll be getting all of the support for your cloud innovations project to help kickstart your company's innovation. So, for any questions or if you would want to sign up for the Engage Innovate program, please feel free to contact us. You can send an email to cloud@apper.ph or visit our website and fill out the contact form there. Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/apper.ph to stay up to date with Apper's events, content, and special promos and programs. So once again, this has been Mosel Cruz from Apper. We would like to thank our speakers Diwa and Patrick, as well as our partners for this event, Kubo. Once again, thank you for attending this event, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And we'll see you next year on next year's PH Startup Week. Thank you so much and take care.